Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. I'm Nadine Saeed. Thank you so much for being a part of this and also on the call leading the conversation. We have Rawan Ida. So what are we doing here today and what are we recognizing? So it's May is Mental Health Awareness. It's important to take time to check in on our well-being and our mental health so that we're able to improve ourselves and ultimately do better and our best that we can each day. With me, I have the Art Spread supporter and board member, Allison Potts, and we're here to talk about mental health awareness. So how did it get started? In 1949, the United States made the Mental Health Awareness Initiative. Its purpose was to recognize and educate everyone so that we could come up with strategies, solutions, and just talk about mental health illnesses, because at that time there really wasn't quite a solution. So for example, a lot after World War I and World War II, we're coming back with anxiety, depression. Also, finances weren't so good during the time of the 30s and 40s after the Great Depression. So mental health awareness started in 1949, but ironically, during this time, lobotomies were picking up in the United States. So you'll see where they're trying to find a solution. They were so desperate for anything to treat hallucinations, very combative and violent patients in institutions. So they came up with the idea of a lobotomy. If you're not familiar, lobotomy started in Portugal by a neurologist who couldn't actually do the lobotomy himself because of his crippled hands. So basically what it was is you're drilling a hole through your skull, and there's a tool that's picked through your brain basically to cut fibers that are connecting. And if you have the template that you're going to design with us, it's the frontal lobe from the thalamus. And at that time, they thought that perhaps if they're able to cut the fibers, that was the solution. And to be honest with you, it's quite barbaric, and there wasn't more true investigation done into the thought behind it. But nevertheless, it spread from Portugal to the United States. You had a neurologist here along with his surgeon doing the drilling in the skulls, and then eventually the neurologist wanted to do it himself and developed the ice pick method, where they would go through the patient's eyes to get to the brain, basically to cut the fibers, do a little holes in the brain, and that would be the cure. Quickly, we found out that that wasn't a cure to mental illness, and it basically transformed the patient to a lethargic vegetable that sat there. A really good movie to capture that, if you haven't seen it in recognition of mental health, is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson. Excellent movie. If you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend it. And I don't want to ruin the plot line or purpose of the movie, but certainly watch it if you have time this weekend. Two artists that I wanted to quickly talk about. One was Richard Dodd. He's an English painter who suffered from schizophrenia. His era was the Victorian era, so late 1800s. He traveled the Middle East a lot, and you'll see in the painting that Rowan has on her screen, he actually did that from a mental asylum because his schizophrenic hallucinations were so bad that he believed his dad was the devil. So what he did was he killed his dad, thinking that it was the devil, and spent the rest of his life in an asylum. That's where he built what we have. It's called the Fairy Feller's Master Stroke. If you pay attention, it's very dark. You'll see fairies. You'll see sort of demonic garden gnomes. You'll see Shakespeare. I think it's Romeo and Juliet also as part of the background. But it's a very incomplete, all over the place thought And then he died after painting that for 9 years. Another female artist who was highly thought of, recognized, and published. Her name, and excuse me if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, she was Swedish, Sigrid Hagerten. You'll see her transformation as well. She painted very light and colorful initially when she became an artist and married her husband. Then over the years, you'll see the transformation, the very dark, nonsensical artwork, because she too was diagnosed with schizophrenia. To cure her schizophrenia, they did a lobotomy on her and it was botched, and she died in 1948. So we've obviously come a very long way. In the early 1950s, we started developing medications that had a lot of side effects, but it was nothing to that of a inconclusive lobotomy. And then obviously now we have much better conversations around mental illness and well-being. So for example, you can look at our blog. I have a blog called Said Blog Talk. It's a play on my last name of Saeed. And I talk about ways you can improve yourselves, really small things. And I think for me, most importantly, is just clearing your mind at night and ways to do that so you're able to sleep and be productive. If you enjoy this event, please do check out our website, sign on, be a subscriber. You can make donations at any time as well. And with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Her name is Marina Braff. She's with us today. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She graduated from UCLA, Cal Lutheran University, and is currently an adjunct professor with Malibu, or Pepperdine University in Malibu. She's been a therapist for 7 years, treats issues from self-confidence, addiction, depression, and stress relationships. She treats preteens, children, teens, and adults. So she's going to share about what art therapy can do for us and how it's a coping method.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Nadine. You did make me sound very important. I'm impressed. Hi, everybody. My name is Marina Braff. Like Nadine mentioned, I've been a therapist for what feels like 5,000 years. But I work a lot with anxiety, depression, overall life transitions. And I'm so excited to be here with all of you guys. As you all know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I think after the last, 14 months of this pandemic, all of our mental health is struggling in different ways. So I think that this is a really timely event for more reasons than one. So I'm really thrilled to be here with all of you. Just a little bit more about myself and how I got into mental health and into therapy. But it really came down to my experiences in middle school, and I was a conflict manager, which was really cool. Basically, the idea was that therapists were kind of intimidating for students. And so they trained students to be counselors instead. And a friend came to me and told me that she was cutting because of problems with her family. Obviously, that was beyond my scope as a conflict manager. So I then helped her get connected to the school counselor. The school counselor got her to a marriage and family therapist, and she and her family were able to work some things out. So that is what inspired me to do it. And since my beginning of my internship to now, I've worked with a variety of ages. In the very beginning, I worked with little kids. And as you all can imagine, a 5-year-old is not going to sit across from you and tell you that they're feeling really anxious and that things at home are really, really bad. So art was this phenomenal tool that I was able to use. I could tell them, draw me a picture of your home, draw me a picture of your family. And just that simple directive was able to provide me with so much insight into their lives that I wouldn't have been able to gather if I was just trying to have a conversation. So art therapy in that way is so powerful because depending on the child's age, depending on their maturity level, or even their comfort in communicating, art is a way to bridge that gap. Art is a way to externalize our feelings, to share how we're feeling, to share our emotions. And like Nadine mentioned, you can see people's transformations in art over time. I worked with a 15-year-old girl who had tried to kill herself. She had really intense family challenges. And when I first started working with her, I had her do like splatter paint. I'm not an artist, by the way, I should say that. So my art interventions are very, very basic. But I had her do splatter paint because it seemed like that would be really cathartic and she could get a lot of feelings out, right? And all of her colors were really dark: black, red, brown, orange. And when I would ask her to describe that painting, it was anger, it was rage, it was sadness, it was depression. She was able to identify with all of the different colors, and it was indicative of how she was feeling emotionally. So I worked with her for about a year. I got really, really attached to this family. And before I left for another job setting, I brought back the splatter paint situation. And lo and behold, the colors changed to blues, yellows, pinks, whites. It was so much lighter and brighter. And to me, that said, I got goosebumps just talking about it. To me, that said everything that it needed to say. She felt like she had a different view on life. She was experiencing things in a different way. And she didn't have to say any of that. I just saw it in the way that her art looked. So I think even thinking about not only as art as a coping skill, which it is, and I can go into that, but art is just a phenomenal way of expressing yourself. And especially if you feel uncomfortable using words to do it, you can paint it out. You can just use the different colors to share how you're feeling. So as you all know, and as Nadine gave a great little bio on what Mental Health Awareness Month is, it's so important that we recognize mental health. And I think even still in 2021, there's a stigma and a taboo around it, which is unbelievable to me because if you don't know, 1 in 5 adults experience mental illness. So even if you don't, there's how many of us on this call? 10. That means 2 of us at least have mental illness. So it's incredibly common, but because we can sometimes feel worried about how others are going to perceive us, we don't talk about it. And if we don't talk about it, then we can't get the help that we need. So as I'm here today, I think one of the greatest things and greatest tools that people can use that are struggling with mental illness is art. And art can be in so many different forms. One of my favorite teachers from elementary school used to tell me, like, you can't make a mistake in art. And for like a self-proclaimed perfectionist, that really hit home to me as something like, oh wow, I don't have to feel anxious about this. How cool. So you can really escape into the art. It doesn't have to look a certain way. You can feel your way through it. Like Nadine mentioned, just, try to take all of what's in your brain, put it aside, grab colored pencils, grab watercolors, grab whatever tools and modalities you have at your disposal and create something. And one of the things that I've seen a lot over this year that people have enjoyed about art is the fact that with art, there's a start, there's a middle, and there's a finish. There's a whole process, and you get to see the entire evolution. And in this last year, we haven't had a lot of those start, middle, and ends because of COVID. COVID has impacted a lot of that for us. So right now, as you guys are all working on your illustrations, on your drawings, you guys are in the starting process, and around 11:30, 2:30, you'll be in the middle. And then hopefully by the end of this call, you'll be at the end, and you'll be able to see a completion of something that you created. And that is a really cool feeling. It's very fulfilling on a lot of different levels. And art also, it pulls you out of your logical brain. It gets you into your creative brain. It gets you using the right side of your head, which if a lot of us are at desk jobs or, we're doing, oh, it's so pretty. Oh, you're showing the brain. I was like, I love those colors. Sorry, squirrel. But if you're able to get away from that logic side of your brain, you can get into the right hemisphere, the right side, and that really allows you to relax a little bit more, to get more creative, to not feel like things have to be so linear. And so many of us are in situations and in jobs where that is a thing. So art is a great way of doing that. Unfortunately, I am not an art therapist, but art therapy is an incredible modality. And I have a few friends who do practice that. So if you guys are interested in getting the names, I'll leave my contact information in the chat with you all, and you can always reach out to me so I can send referrals. But art therapy is great, especially like I mentioned earlier, if talking isn't really your jam or expressing your emotions is a little bit trickier. There's, they're using collages, they're using paintings, they're using magazine images and photos and so many things as a way to help someone externalize, meaning, to feel outside of themselves as opposed to having to directly identify with that. So that's really awesome. Ultimately, though, what I really want my last couple of minutes of this chat to drive home is that mental health impacts everyone. Like I mentioned, 1 in 5. But even if you're not the 1 in 5 that is directly impacted, if you're not directly suffering with a mental illness, the mental illness impacts everyone around that person. And sometimes it can be really hard if we're not the one suffering with a mental illness, but our loved ones are. And that is a really challenging situation because we want to be there for those people and we end up being their caretakers and really helping them. But that makes it that much more important that you, as the caretaker, also are engaging in self-care. And self-care comes in many forms, and art is included. So when we're talking about Mental Health Awareness Month, yes, it is absolutely for those individuals who are directly suffering, but also for those who are impacted as well. So I'm so happy that I got to be a part of this, even though it's very short. I'm sorry I can't stay for the very end. But I will leave my contact information over here in the chat. So if you guys have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out. But these brain images are gorgeous. Like, Rowan, can I have that for my office? Like, dibs. So pretty. But yay, I will frame it. It's so pretty.
And Marina, just a
Yeah,
question for you.
sure.
If we see someone who, whether or not we're very close to that person, but if we see someone who we believe is struggling with something, how do we approach that person to have a conversation?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it depends on like your level of comfort with that individual. So if it's someone that you know super well, like you can just say like, "Hey, I've noticed X, Y, and Z. Like, I'm a little concerned. Like, how are you doing?" And it's just, expressing it with curiosity and genuineness. And, if they're not ready to talk, they're going to say like, "Oh, no, everything is fine." And then you can say, "Okay, no problem. I just wanted to check in." Like, if something comes up, just know I'm always here. So you're letting them know that you are available and that you are aware of how they're feeling and how they're doing. And then if they do actually admit that, yeah, I'm really struggling with anxiety, with depression, then you can suggest that they see a therapist, that they find some different community resources. I'm going to put a couple websites on the chat too that can help you find therapists. And then NAMI.org, I think it's .org. NAMI is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. There are so many resources, and they have blogs that are really helpful with this kind of stuff on how do I talk to my loved ones about a mental illness, or how do I broach the topic if I think that they're struggling. All of that is going to be on that website. But I think it's really getting to the point where they feel comfortable enough sharing that they're really struggling, and then asking them directly, "Okay, like, thank you so much for telling me that you're struggling. How can I help you? Like, are you looking for a therapist? Are you looking for like books and resources? Like, how do you need me to help you?" And you just do exactly that, instead of guessing and feeling like, "Oh, I'll just throw all these darts at a wall." Sorry.
That was great. I'm certainly going to start using that too. Another question I have, I guess, personal experience. If someone around you just seems, for whatever reason, down, kind of negative, what things can you do to bring them in sort of a positive direction?
So I think it really depends. Like, when you talk about people with depression, we want them to be happy. We want them to feel better. We want them to be doing good. And depending on where they're at in their depression, it may or may not be realistic. And, for those of you who have had anxiety, this is my favorite example. So if I have a panic attack and someone is like, just chill, just like calm down, I'm like, oh my God, shut up. Like, that doesn't help me, right? So if you're depressed and everyone's like, oh, just be happy, you should just feel good, like life is so good. It's like, oh my God, shut up. You don't get it. So it's really trying to validate their feelings of wherever they're at. And then, if they're in a space where they feel like they could potentially like find a glimmer of hope in something or get a little excited about something, you lean into that. If they're saying, I'm really, really sad, but I'm looking forward to the summer because I love the weather in the summer. Oh my God, me too. Do you want to take a trip during the summer? And then that gives them something to look forward to. If they're in a place where they're like, I'm just really struggling, like I'm just feeling depleted and exhausted, it's like, all right, I hear you. Like, do you want to just chill out and watch a movie? Like, do you want some company? And so ultimately, you're meeting them where they're at instead of trying to push them into somewhere where you think that they need to be.
Great, thanks. I don't know if anyone else has a question for Marina. If you want to put it in a chat box or simply ask it now before we let her go.
Ask away. I love Yeah, the psychology of colors is fascinating. And this is a totally random sidebar, but again, I can geek out on this, is that like a lot of shows use the psychology of color in like their casting and in their like wardrobe and stuff, like Breaking Bad, for any of you have seen that. If you look up the psychology of color for Breaking Bad, it is insane the work that they did in building out the characters and the colors that they use consistently throughout. It's really cool.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's really cool. Yeah. Same with Handmaid's Tale, same thing.
And Rowan, I don't see a chat box, to be honest with you.
There's like a little chat blurb box. Yeah. Yeah, and you'll see the information that I shared in there.
Okay, I guess my last question is if your work environment, because we spend so much time at work, some of us, if your work environment is sort of you want to uplift that work environment, how can you do that? What can you do, small things to do that?
So the big thing for me with my work environment is I try to think of all of the senses. So things that you can see, you can smell, you can touch, you can hear, you can feel, you can taste, right? So in my office, I make sure that there's always a really pretty plant because I like seeing plants. It also gives oxygen, so boost. I love candles or oil diffusers and having different scents. I always have mints in my office because that's my taste. Hearing is like having white noise or relaxing sounds. So really like looking at the senses and seeing how you can create your own like personalized twist for each of those is going to be really nice. And also some of those you can use them as little brain breaks. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, like maybe you have a cup of tea that you really enjoy and you smell in that tea, you breathe in the tea. The oils can be really cool. Like when I'm at home, I have a smell that's always burning that's my work smell. And then when I'm done, I'll blow that candle out and I'll change it to like my home, like off the clock smell. And that's really, really nice. So I think thinking about things like that can also signal your brain that you're transitioning. I also have like a few infographics that I've created over this last year to help with working from home stress that I'll send over to you, Nadine, and then you can send out to the people on here if that helps.
That would be great. And it looks like we have a question from a John Doe.
Yes.
When feeling depressed to the point of not wanting to get out of bed, what are tips to convince yourself to get up?
Really, really small things. So, like making a really good cup of coffee in the morning and knowing that that coffee's ready, or knowing that you have a tea to look forward to, or slippers that you really enjoy. Like small, small, small. Because a lot of times we think like, okay, I have to get up and I have to start my day and I have this whole laundry list of things. And then you think about that list and you just want to like sink further into bed. So just thinking of very small things, again, creature comforts, things that you know you will enjoy, and having those set up. So my coffee maker has a timer on it. So I know that when I wake up in the morning, my coffee's ready. And I swear that's like the only reason I get up some mornings is I just want to get to the coffee maker. And then once you've gotten up, then you're going to the coffee, you're going to get tea. You may like, open up your window, get some fresh air, and it makes you realize that there's a world out there. It can help you feel a little bit more engaged. But ultimately, you're just taking smaller and smaller steps to try to get you to feel more and more engaged.
Thank
And of
you.
course, I have to say it just to say it, but of course, if it ever gets to the point where you just can't get out of bed and it's crippling you to the point where it's happening numerous days at a time, then it's probably might be helpful to seek some professional help so that they can give you more personalized coping skills.
Thanks, Marina. And we have Elizabeth who also wants to, the ideas that you were talking about to cope with stress and anxiety. Anything that you can put, Marina, in the chat box. And then also, Elizabeth, great point. My blog also addresses some, and I'm not a licensed therapist, so take my tips with a grain of salt. But just a person with a very stressful job, career, and life in general. These are things I've thought of to help everyone out. And with that, Marina, I know you have to go. Thank you so much for
Of
doing this.
course. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Of course. So glad you guys are doing this. Enjoy your art time. I want to see the pictures when you're all done. Bye. Have a good one. All right. Bye.
Hi guys, can you guys hear me? There's a party going on next door, so I don't know if the music is too loud. Okay, great. So hello everyone, my name is Sarah. So my anxiety kind of began towards a little bit prior to undergrad school. Um, at first, I didn't really know what it was, or I didn't really believe that I had it. Um, I saw a doctor, and he told me, he kind of explained to me what anxiety was, and he's like, it could be that this is something that you're dealing with, and I didn't believe it. Um, but then further along as I got into grad school, it just started getting more intense to where it was just controlling, my thoughts, the way I would act, even physically controlling. So then that's when I kind of knew that, okay, this is actually an issue and this is something that I'm really dealing with and struggling with. It became debilitating. I would just miss presentations. I couldn't go because physically I wasn't there and mentally I wasn't there. And it was a real struggle for me. And once I realized how serious it was, I was like, okay, I need to do something about it because it was really affecting my life. Not only in school, but it started to affect my personal life. And I was like, okay, this is really an issue. So I tried a couple things, but what really worked for me is I actually started looking into hypnotherapy, which a friend recommended that I looked into it. I saw a couple doctors, different therapists, but it was really hypnotherapy that worked for me personally. I know everyone deals with anxiety in different ways, but it was really through hypnotherapy that I realized that nothing is as bad as it seems, and we can't control everything. And I think that's where my anxiety really stemmed from, was feeling like I wasn't control, like I wasn't in control of the situation that I was in. And then it would turn into, I'm not in control of my mind and I'm not in control of my body. So really kind of just understanding that and stripping all of my thoughts to realizing what it actually was, it just felt like like no control. I had no control. So I saw a hypnotherapist, and I would talk to her. I would see her maybe once a week at first, but then after I saw that it was really working and it was really helping me, I was able to do little things, like Marina said, little things like maybe doing something in the day that I would look forward to, or lighting a candle, or just talking to a friend. So I think it can be something as seeing a therapist or seeing someone to talk to, or something as small as just talking to a friend, or buying yourself something, going shopping. And today I think I just always tell myself, if I ever get that feeling where I'm starting to get anxious again, nothing is bad as it seems. Nothing is ever bad. Nothing was ever bad as I thought it would be. And yeah, I mean, it's still something I deal with today, but I would definitely say it's not as intense as it used to be. It's just kind of regaining control of your mind, for me at least.